So we have some fight announcements for UFC Abu Dhabi. Nick Diaz is returning to face Vicente Luque in a 5-round co-main event. Does that make sense to you? Think about what I just said. A 5-round co-main event between Vicente Luque and Nick Diaz. Yes, you heard me right. And also, this fight takes place in Abu Dhabi. Does that sound like good matchmaking to you? Because to me it doesn't. It sounds terrible. I hate this. And I know some of you guys in the comments are going to be like, man, you can't be grateful, man. This is a crazy fight night. This is stacked. This is stacked. No, guys. This is terrible matchmaking. It really is. And it really pisses me off. It really does. And I get it. Nick Diaz, fan favorite, a legend. Tony Ferguson as well. But these are two guys that are way past their prime that probably should not be fighting. And not only that, but you have the opportunity to give them back, to put them in a fight, and you don't put them in the same fight. Like, they're not fighting each other. Like, why is Tony Ferguson and Nick Diaz not fighting each other? And also, if you're going to put them on a card, why would you put Nick Diaz and Tony Ferguson in a card in Abu Dhabi? Like, how does that make any sense? And then not only that, but you're putting Nick Diaz in a 5-round co-main event when this guy was shitting his pants against Robbie Lawler and didn't even make it to the 3rd round in that fight. I believe that was back in 2021. How do you expect Nick Diaz to look now? And I get it. Vicente Luque is definitely past his prime as well. Put a terrible performance against Joaquin Buckley. Fought very strange against RDA as well. He had like a heavy grappling style, which we don't really see Vicente Luque do. So he definitely fought very strange. He definitely is not the same fighter after that Jeff Neal fight. But this fight is just sad. Like, some of the matchmaking here is just, honestly, it's very, very sad. And in my opinion, if Nick Diaz wanted to fight, if Tony Ferguson wanted to fight, why didn't you just match them up and put them in the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler card? At least, okay, you're watching two legends who are definitely past their prime, a lot of nostalgia. Somebody's going to get a win, right? Nick Diaz is going to win or Tony Ferguson's going to win. So we're going to be happy either way, and they probably should both retire after that fight. But a Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz fight does absolutely nothing for the sport. And neither does Michael Chiesa versus Tony Ferguson. Like, what do those fights do for the sport? If Luque wins, who most likely is going to win that fight, I guess Nick Diaz maybe has a chance if he fights better than he did against Robbie Lawler, but I don't really think so. Maybe Vicente Luque tries to take him down to the ground. 5-round co-main event? Really? Why? Like, why is that fight a 5-round co-main event? Just make it a 3-rounder. It's not a war. And then Michael Chiesa, Tony Ferguson in the welterweight division. I know Michael Chiesa is coming off back-to-back losses. He lost to Kevin Holland. I believe before that he lost to Sean Brady. Then he lost to Vicente Luque. So he hasn't won a fight in quite a while. I believe he hasn't won a fight since when? When was the last time Michael Chiesa won a fight? Against Neil Magny back in 2021. Oh my goodness. This is very sad. And then he's fighting Tony Ferguson. And yeah, Michael Chiesa isn't very good, especially not on the feet. But he's going to be a big welterweight in this fight. And Tony Ferguson, he's not a big 170. If anything, he's kind of a small lightweight. I know he's kind of skinny and long, but he doesn't pack a lot of muscle. And then he's moving up to the welterweight division. We saw how he looked against Nate Diaz. He looked terrible. Like, Tony Ferguson looked absolutely terrible. Probably one of his worst performances against Nate Diaz. And then now he's fighting Michael Chiesa, who, even though doesn't have great striking, at least he's a big guy. He's a big welterweight. Like, Michael Chiesa is probably going to submit him because Tony Ferguson has looked that bad on the feet. Like, this fights don't make any fucking sense. Like, who are these matchmaking? Who is this fight for? This fight does nothing. If Michael Chiesa wins, what does it do for the sport? If Vicente Luque wins, what does it do for the sport? Nothing, because we know these are guys that are terrible and are past their prime. At least Tony versus Nick Diaz, whoever wins that fight, at least you're going to be a little bit happy because either Tony's going to get a win or Nick Diaz is going to get a win. And at the end, they could both retire in a legendary fight. So this is just terrible matchmaking from the UFC. Like, how can people even be excited for this? Like, honestly, like, I'm not excited for this. This is a terrible fight. Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz makes no sense. If Luque wins, it does nothing for him, does nothing for the sport. And then Nick Diaz is returning to fight in a co-main event in Abu Dhabi. Like, I still can't believe it's real. I'm like, really? This is the best you got? Why? Like, really? Like, you know Nick Diaz is a big name. Then put him with another legend who kind of has a big name. I know that Tony Ferguson is on a 7-fight losing streak, but at least fans are going to be happy because at least one of them is going to win. But this matchmaking just makes no sense. And then the location for it doesn't make any sense either. But anyway, besides those two fights, which are absolutely terrible, and I don't want to hear it that you guys are happy just because it's a fight night, it still sucks and it's still bad matchmaking. I'm still going to call it out. They also announced a couple days ago, Marlon Vera versus Davidson Figueiredo. This fight doesn't make any sense. And stylistically, it's a terrible fight. It's a very boring one as well. Marlon Vera is coming off that loss to Sean O'Malley. We all thought he was gonna fight Peter Yan in November, which I thought was pretty good matchmaking. Davidson Figueiredo, in my opinion, should fight like a Song Yadong. I think that would make a lot more sense because now, who is Peter Yan gonna fight? Is he gonna fight Henry Cejudo, who is very low in the rankings? There's nobody for Peter Yan to fight. Corey Sandhagen is fighting Umar Nurmagomedov. Davidson Figueiredo is fighting Marlon Vera. Sean O'Malley is gonna fight Merab. So who is Peter Yan gonna fight now? I think this is very weird matchmaking as well. And stylistically, this is not a very fun fight. I think Marlon Vera versus Kyler Phillips, if anything, made more sense. And then Davidson Figueiredo versus Song Yadong made more sense, in my opinion, right? Because Marlon Vera versus Davidson Figueiredo, stylistically, it's a very boring fight. Both of these guys have very low output, very single shot, a lot of power. Marlon Vera obviously has a great chin. It's a 3-round fight. Marlon Vera has looked absolutely terrible in his last couple of fights. He arguably lost that fight to Pedro Munoz. Before that, he got outclassed by Corey Sandhagen, got outclassed by Sean O'Malley just recently. So Marlon Vera is definitely on the decline. And Davidson Figueiredo, I mean, I think he put a very boring performance against Cody Garbrandt and kind of looks slow on the feet. I know Cody Garbrandt has pretty fast hands, pretty fast boxing, and maybe you don't want to stand with that guy. And he did look a bit undersized against Cody Garbrandt, so maybe I could see Marlon Vera winning this fight. I do think people are underestimating Marlon Vera going into this fight. Yes, I know he has low output. I know he doesn't have the best takedown defense, but I think he's going to be a big guy. He has a granite chin, and I think he has a power advantage over Davidson Figueiredo, in my opinion. And we've seen Davidson Figueiredo get cracked. So I could see Marlon Vera winning. I think if it was a 5-round fight, I would be a lot more confident in picking Marlon Vera. I still could see him winning, but I definitely understand why people are picking Davidson Figueiredo. But how's Davidson Figueiredo going to win this fight? Is he going to outstrike Marlon Vera? I don't think so. These guys both have very low output. If anything, he's going to try to get Marlon Vera to the ground and take him down and basically be a crotch sniffer, lay and pray, because I don't really see him submitting Marlon Vera. And that's kind of a boring fight, man. Like, I think this is a boring fight. Like, I get it. Figueiredo's number 6. Marlon Vera's number 4. I guess ranking-wise, it makes sense. But as a stylistic fight, as somebody, I guess, if you're Dana White, you want to make the best, most entertaining fights while also honoring the rankings. I think that's the logic that they typically go for. But this is just not a very exciting fight, in my opinion. I think it's a very lackluster fight. I think Davidson Figueiredo probably wins by a decision, just basically taking down Marlon Vera. Maybe I don't see him really outstriking on Marlon Vera, and I think Marlon Vera could definitely catch him on the feet. And I saw Davidson Figueiredo very hesitant on the feet against Cody Garbrandt. We saw how he was able to mix the takedowns against Rafa. And he was also able to hurt Rafa, I believe, in that 3rd round or 2nd round, if I'm not mistaken. I actually went to go watch that fight live. So it could be competitive. I just don't see it being a very fun fight. I think it's going to be kind of a snoozy. But I'm not too mad about that fight being on the card. But that on top of Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz and then Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa, I don't think this card is all that good, man. I think this card sucks. So the last thing I want to talk about is that it appears that Islam Makhachev might be going into this fight with a staph infection, because I just saw a picture of his left leg and it seems like a staph infection to me. And this is very concerning if you're an Islam Makhachev fan. And if you're someone who's very confident that Islam is going to win this fight, and does this change my pick? No. I mean, we don't really know the context behind this staph infection. Was it a month ago? Was it recently? How long ago did Islam take those antibiotics? Because we know that when you take antibiotics, you know, your cardio takes a hit, your body takes a hit, right? You're wiping out all the bacteria to kill that infection. So how is Islam Makhachev gonna do? And maybe it doesn't affect him in those early rounds because, you know, of that adrenaline. But if he takes down this, if he takes down, I was gonna say if he takes down Islam, if he takes down Dustin Poirier, and let's say he's not able to submit him, that could, you know, affect him. His gas tank might not be as good. And we saw against Benoit Saint Denis where Benoit had a very successful first round, and after that he gassed out, and we saw where there was a lot more openings on the feet. We saw where Benoit wasn't really covering his face, and he already fights like a brawler. Plus, on top of the fact he was going into the fight with staph infection. And look, I'm not gonna make excuses for Benoit Saint Denis. If he kept fighting that same way against Dustin Poirier on the feet, he was gonna get knocked out eventually, right? Or maybe that staph infection just made it a little bit quicker because his gas tank went out the window so fast. But here Islam Makhachev, it seems like he's going into this fight with staph infection. If you're a Dustin Poirier fan, you're going to be very happy about this. Shine bright like a diamond, because it might just happen. It might just happen, guys. It might just happen. I'm not going to change my pick. I still think that Islam Makhachev is too good with his grappling. His takedowns are amazing. His judo throws are amazing. His submission skills are top notch. And even on the feet, I could see him giving Dustin Poirier a lot of problems, because I definitely think Dustin Poirier, his boxing has slowed down quite a bit. And sometimes he does get sloppy on the feet, and he lets himself get pressured up against the fence. So I still think Islam Makhachev is going to win this fight. But I am a little bit more concerned now that he's going into the fight with staph infection. I hope that this was like a long time ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it's just a scar, whatever. But still, man, it's still a little bit concerning. I mean, it's probably not that bad, because if it was really that bad, I feel like they would pull him out of the fight. So it's probably not that bad, but it's still a little bit concerning. And if you're rooting for Dustin Poirier to pull one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, this is definitely something that might make you happy. I still think that Islam Makhachev is probably going to take him down. I don't really see Islam entertaining the striking as much as some people think he is. I really don't think so. I think Khabib is going to keep him very humble. He's going to tell him, hey, man, you better take him down. You better submit him right away, because you don't really want to stand with Dustin Poirier. I think they're going to give Dustin Poirier a lot of respect on the feet. So I think he's going to go for a more grappling heavy approach, which I think is going to piss off the casual audience who want to see Dustin Poirier outbox Islam Makhachev, and they want to see a little bit more of those Islam Makhachev striking exchanges. And a little part of me hopes that happens. A little part of me hopes that Dustin is able to do better on the ground, and that we get an extended fight, that this fight goes into the 4th or 5th round. I kind of want to see that, because I mean, Islam Makhachev doesn't fight very often, and then if he submits Dustin Poirier in the 1st round, we're going to be feeling a little bit sour, because we're like, okay, I guess it was that easy. We knew it would be that easy, but a little part of me hopes that it's a longer fight.